The nation's governors are in Washington for their annual conference, and we want to talk policy and politics with one of their leaders, Indiana Governor Mitch Daniels. And Governor, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Thank you, Chris.
It seems as this Republican race grows on, the GOP voters are growing less, not more satisfied with the field. Let me put up a couple of statistics. A Gallup poll finds 55% of Republicans and Republican-leading independents wish someone else were running. And here's what former Florida Governor Jeb Bush said this week. It's a little troubling sometimes when people are appealing to people's fears and emotion rather than trying to get them to look over the horizon for a broader perspective. Question, are you troubled by the negativity, some would say the smallness of this race?
Oh, from time to time. On both sides, by the way. The president's one of the main perpetrators of negative politics. And we can all wish, and I do, that it would subside some. But I don't necessarily blame the candidates. There's a certain dynamic to the race that leads to the magnification of small differences and people picking on each other.
Let me ask you another aspect of it. You have said that Republicans need, particularly in these times, to focus on the economy and debt, and as you famously said once, to call a truce on social issues. Are you troubled when you see Republicans spending so much time talking about contraception and Planned Parenthood?
Well, let's remember, they didn't start this. The president did, with a very intrusive, liberty-limiting decision, and they were asked to react to it, so they answered the questions. No, I think when they get a chance, Governor Romney this week, talking about all the right issues. And ultimately, that'll be where this election gets decided. This economy is staggering. It's in very weak shape. It's the weakest recovery ever from a deep recession. Got the fewest number of Americans or percentage of Americans in the workforce working today since the days of the stay-at-home mom. And so eventually this is going to be a binary choice, and it'll be decided, I'm confident, on the biggest issues and biggest threats. Are
you impressed by Romney's economic plan as he just laid it out?
I'm very encouraged. And other candidates, by the way, in that field are talking about the right questions. How do we get this economy growing? How do we stop killing growth, as this administration does, with every new action and regulation and threatened tax and so forth? And so, yes, I think that things are headed in a direction that will present the American people with a very good contrast and a positive alternative.
All right, I want to ask you a couple of political questions. We'll move on to policy.
I knew you would.
Well, okay, but is it too late for someone new to get into this race and to push it to a contested convention in August?
You're not asking the right guy. I'm not a great student of these things. I'm told it's not too late for people to file in a significant number of states with a significant number of delegates. As a technical matter, as a practical matter, I don't think it's very likely, and I don't know what it would lead to.
Is there any chance, are there any circumstances under which Mitch Daniels gets into this race?
No, sir. I crossed that decision bridge a long time ago. My family did, and I'm trying, when I get the chance, to play some role. I look forward to helping our eventual nominee. But running for president, just something I never thought about doing, and nothing changed my mind.
So, Sherman-esque statement, if drafted, you will not run.
These sorts of things just don't happen, Chris. You've been covering these things a long time. We're going to have a nominee probably well ahead of the convention. And a lot of these questions that are really very intriguing, I know right now, will be long forgotten. And we'll have a debate about how we keep this country from going broke, how we restore the American dream, rebuild a stable and hopeful middle class.
Okay, let's focus on that. As you know, gas prices are rising sharply. Back when Barack Obama took office, gas cost $1.85 a gallon. It's now up to $3.67 a gallon. In your formal response to the President's State of the Union speech, you blamed what you called extremist policies by the president that stifled domestic production, and you said that that was a pro-poverty policy. This week, the president talked about Republicans. Here's what he said.
And you can bet that since it's an election year, they're already dusting off their three-point plan for $2 gas. And I'll save you the suspense. Step one is to drill, and step two is to drill, and then step three is to keep drilling.
President says that Republicans are playing politics with gas prices, that a lot of it is beyond the control of any president, and that domestic oil production is the highest in 8 years.
Well, let's give the president credit for one domestic policy that worked. He wanted higher gas prices, and he got them. He said it. Secretary Chu said $8 or about what they pay in Europe would be great. Secretary Salazar said it could go to $10. He still wouldn't be for allowing drilling in many of the places where we know there's an awful lot of domestic production. And so they've gotten the doubling of gas prices, and perhaps worse, is a conscious policy of this administration, maybe the one thing they set out to do and actually accomplished. And let's face it, when you lock up vast tracts of land where we know there's oil, when you lean against the shale oil and shale gas, they've got 8 federal agencies now clamoring to regulate this greatest break we've had in the American economy in many, many years. When you have environmental regulations that are going to raise the price of refining gas, possibly put some of our scarce refineries out of business, guess what? You're going to get higher gas prices.
But if I may, they say they've opened millions of acres to oil and gas exploration, and that U.S. dependence on foreign oil is the lowest in 16 years.
No thanks to them. This is the product of the openings that happened under his predecessor. He likes to talk about what he inherited. He inherited a more aggressive pro-energy policy, and since then, leases have been cut in half. Permitting for new drilling has been cut by 2/3.
Okay, let's talk about the economy, and you gave some numbers earlier, and I want to come back to it, the question of just how strong this economy is, how fast the recovery is. Unemployment, now down to 8.3%. That's the lowest in 3 years. New claims for jobless benefits this past week hit a 4-year low, and consumer confidence is at a 1-year high. Isn't the economy getting better, sir?
If the president thinks he's going to be running on an economic success story, he is headed for a rude surprise, in my opinion. The unemployment rate doesn't tell us much anymore, Chris, and this is widely written these days. The employment rate, again, just fell below 64%. It's the lowest since the 70s, and again, a lot of moms were staying at home. The unemployment insurance claims may be down, but we've moved a couple million people onto the Social Security disability rolls, which has become a new form of perhaps permanent unemployment for a lot of people. So this is not a pretty picture, and we ought not candy coat it. We ought to recognize we're going to need a different mix of very pro-growth policies. I've said often, until Americans are working again, until we have the revenue coming in to pay our bills, meet our debts, growth ought to trump everything else.
Finally, you just signed this month a law making Indiana the 23rd state, right-to-work state in the country, which means that people no longer have to join a union to get a specific job. Question, what's wrong with unions?
Nothing's wrong with unions, and if that measure affected in any way the right to bargain or the right to organize collectively, I wouldn't have been for it. That's completely untouched. All it says is the worker can decide whether or not it's worth the dues, whether they'd rather have that money themselves.
But doesn't that necessarily, in a practical sense, over the long run, weaken unions? Certainly the unions think so.
No, not necessarily. There are higher rates of unionization in some right-to-work states than there are in Indiana today. It's really a matter of whether people think they're getting their money's worth. And we just knew it would bring more jobs to our state. That was our principal motive for doing it, and already the phone is ringing, and we are about to strike some agreements, I think, to put a few more Hoosiers to work.
All right. Back in 2006, you said that you opposed right to work as, in your words, too divisive. Now the unions say, as a result of this decision to sign and make it a right to work state, that wages will go down and workplaces will become more dangerous.
Well, first of all, that's all bunk. The facts could not be more clear that safety's unaffected. Wages and job growth are much faster in the 22 right-to-work states than in the 28 that didn't provide this protection to workers. Now, for several years, it's absolutely true. I never said I was opposed to right to work. I said we can succeed under the labor laws we have. Ultimately, and particularly in this terrible national economy, I reluctantly came to the conclusion that we needed to take this step if we were going to have be the kind of opportunity state I want Indiana to be.
Governor Daniels, I want to thank you so much for coming in. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, sir.
Pleasure's mine.
Please come back, sir.
Will do.